emollient, is that the right word?
Lubricant.
Dealing with your period while on a cycle tour. This is a video for all people who menstruate, for dealing with Aunt Flo on the road.
With gear in tow.
Let's roll. All right, welcome back to the Rad Bike Adventure. I'm Ryan.
And I'm Darren, and our channel's all about cycle touring, bike packing, and basically anything bike-related content.
Indeed, so if you're into that sort of thing, or you'd like to be, consider gently tapping that subscribe button. Okay, let's jump into today's topic. Periods.
Let's do it.
They suck. Let's be real here.
A lot.
Yeah. We made this video because a lot of people do ask us, like, what do you do about your period when you're on your cycle tour? Periods exist, okay? So the human race can exist. So it's a necessary inconvenience, I'd say, and a painful one at that.
It also can, I think, potentially deter people from cycle touring because it's a messy thing that happens monthly. And so for some women, it's not worth it. But we've got some tips and tricks for you to deal with it while you're on the road.
We're gonna break this into 3 categories here. So the first one being the logistics, like how do you manage your period? How do you deal? The second one is, should I ride? Should I continue riding? Should I take a rest day? We're gonna cover that. And then number 3 is gonna just be like all of our general tips to make having your period on the road an easier thing to deal with. Okay, so there's 3 main ways to really deal with your period while you're on the road. So we're gonna go through those 3 things and tell you our thoughts and opinions on each of them.
So probably our least favorite option are disposable pads and tampons. While they're easily accessible, they're wasteful. And I find they can be quite irritating to that area.
Yeah, and you have to pack a lot of them. So that's another thing is that if you're going on a longer trip, like, okay, 3 pads is clearly not gonna be enough for your period. You're gonna have to bring a whole stack of these or a whole stack of tampons. Do know that you're gonna have to pack this out and bring like a separate little baggie because you're not gonna be able to bury this waste wherever you go. And if you think that they're super sanitary and sterile,
think again.
they're not. Okay, what's option number 2?
Option number 2 is a menstrual cup. We just recently purchased a new one. This is the 𝙾𝙊𝙉𝙗𝙗. 𝙾𝙊𝙉𝙗𝙗.
And this, I would say, is probably our top option.
The pro to this is there's no waste. This is a reusable cup, but not all size fits for everyone. So you're gonna want to match up the size to your size. Whether you've had children or not, or if your cervix is shallow or deeper, will depend on the type of menstrual cup you can use.
And how heavy your flow is too, right?
Exactly.
There's larger ones or smaller ones. So you kind of have to experiment to get the right one for you. So the pros of this are, this is it, right? And I think it comes with a little carrying case.
Yes.
You got a little carrying case, and this is nice because instead of having like a bunch of pads and tampons, which is probably like quadruple what I'm holding here, you just have one single little cup.
Another pro to using the menstrual cup is I honestly have to change it out way less. When I have a tampon, and I have a heavier flow, so usually I would have to use a combination of a tampon and a pad. So with the menstrual cup, I can go hours without having to change it out, which is a huge plus in my mind because before I'd have to constantly be going through those pads and tampons.
Yeah, you weren't so sure at the beginning. You're like, this thing is gonna hold enough?
But it saved my life. I love the menstrual cup. You just have to get used to it, and once
Should we make it into a necklace?
We can make it into a little necklace. No, maybe not.
Let's talk about
The cons. So there is a high learning curve into using this. So I would highly suggest practicing and or even using lube on the menstrual cup to practice inserting and taking it out. I'd watch YouTube videos on how to use menstrual cups for the technique of putting it in, and then there is a twisting motion to try to get it out as well. Another con to using a menstrual cup is when you are cramping or on those days where it's at its worst, sometimes the cup is uncomfortable. So you may not be able to use it on every day of your period. It really depends on the person, and some people can use it, some people can't on those days. Another con is it can be messy. So if you want to take it out and in while on the side of the road, if it's an emergency situation, it might get a little messy. So you'll have to have some sort of water bottle or handkerchief or some sort of cloth to use to wipe your hands to clean the area if you don't have access to a bathroom.
And then for those of us who don't really like using a menstrual cup, a great option is reusable pads. So we've got a bunch of them here, or period underwear. We don't have a pair of those yet, but I'm definitely going to get some. But the period underwear is great because you're just going to wear the underwear and it has the pad built into it. But these are really great. They're kind of like a flannel material, and there's some that are just like a panty liner. So it's just like that, and you're just going to clip it onto whatever underwear you have, which kind of like having this because you can make any underwear a pad underwear instead of having to buy the specific period underwear that can get like a little bit pricier. And then some of these other ones have inserts, so these flannel little inserts. Then you just put it inside here, and you've made like whatever thickness you need for depending on how heavy your flow is that day. But again, same kind of thing, it just covers up.
These are highly absorbable. At first I thought, what the heck, how's this gonna work? But it truly works really well. I think it works better than the disposable pads.
Oh, definitely.
I have to switch out disposable pads way more frequently than I do the cloth pads.
The flannel pads. And once it is totally saturated, obviously you do have to wash it. So this is kind of the theme with some of these more reusable items, like with the cup as well. You just have to get used to seeing your own blood. It's a part of you. It's all right. It's natural. You could get a washing bag and clean it in something like that. Or if you're staying at hotels or motels or at host places, then you can always just wait until you can, wash it out in the shower. And as long as you give it a good rinse, you're good. Like if you're in the backcountry, just rinse it out and you can dry it and continue wearing it. And of course, wash it once you get somewhere where you can properly wash it. If the idea of having like a bloody pad that you have to carry with you is kind of gross, you can just get some sort of case like this that's like a little bit plasticky. Or of course, just a plastic bag works too if you want to go super minimal.
So while on the road, you are constantly reminded about your own personal waste. And
yeah, that's true.
We've talked to a lot of cycle tourists, and they all talk about how guilty they feel about all the waste they provide while on the road, because a lot of solo tourists or even couple tourists are buying single-use items. To add on to that is now your sanitary pads,
and tampons,
yeah. Which definitely hurts the conscience.
Yeah, it does. I agree. And I think that if you know how to use a tampon, you can use this. It will take it some time, but you can get it. For me, I wasn't a tampon user, so I tried and I was like, nah, don't lie, I'll just use the reusable pads.
For some who have a smaller flow,
yes,
you're basically using a panty liner.
Hey.
You have 1 day of a real pad and then like a panty liner.
I have 2 days. All right, so those are our 3 main options of how to deal with your period, right? So now that we've talked about how to deal with it, so the second thing we're going to talk about is riding. Like, can you still ride when you're on your period, especially those tough days, or should you just take a rest day and call it quits for the day and say, no cycling? Darren, what do you think?
Well, I would say I would give you the opportunity to make the choice yourself. I would not feel guilty about riding or not riding. Listen to your body.
Yeah.
Okay, you're on a long distance tour or even a short distance tour. If you don't feel comfortable riding, you're in that much pain, it's your first day, don't feel guilty. Take a rest day.
In saying that, we do usually ride on our periods. I think maybe once or twice while on tour, we might have taken a rest day when we were having like an especially tough day and we didn't have to keep riding. But on those days where we had to ride, and I do remember a couple specific instances where I was really not feeling good, pushing myself to get out and get on the bike actually did help. Kind of helps take your mind off it, especially if it's not a hilly day. If it's a hilly day, then man, it can be really, really tough. But when there's no hills and it's just kind of gentle, I actually find that it helps me alleviate my cramps because it kind of takes my mind off of it, gets your blood flowing. There has been science proven that exercise will help your period. So I would try to defer to like, I'll be all right, I can get through today. But again, if you're having just a really terrible period and your cramps are overtaking you, I understand that pain. I've been there. And then maybe it's time to just take a day where you're riding, half the distance you thought, or not at all, and you just take a rest day. I agree with you. Everybody's different, and listen to your body.
Now that we've talked about the logistics and whether we ride, now we're gonna get into our tips and tricks on managing your period on the road. So my first tip is to get a period tracker, i.e. an app. I like to use the Flow app. There's plenty of other period trackers, but I think it's a really smart thing to do because now you can be really aware of when your period's gonna happen and you can plan your trip accordingly. So you maybe don't plan that route through the Alps on those 2 days where you're gonna be getting your period. Maybe take a little detour or take a rest day so that you can plan out the days accordingly.
Yeah, period tracker is key. Darren mentioned Flow. There's another one. I cannot remember the name. I'm going to put it down here. The only thing I don't like about Flow is it does assume that you are a woman and that you're heterosexual. So those are some downsides for me, but it is free and I just use it to track the days.
There's a wide range of options where you're keeping track of your mood changes, your symptoms, all that jazz.
That's what I was going to say too, because when you're tracking your period, sometimes you'll just feel like crap one day and you're like, why do I feel so exhausted? What's wrong with me? And you can like self-doubt, like I'm not a real cyclist. And then you look in your period tracker and you're like, oh, okay, I'm about to get my period in 3 days. And I don't know, just for me, it's a nice signal to have, and you don't really have to think about it because you just put in when your period was, and then it's going to self-predict when your next one will happen. Another tip that I would have is making sure that you have some sort of lubricant like Vaseline or chamois butter, like diaper rash cream, something that you can put down there when you're having your period, especially if you're using pads or reusable pads, because things are going to be sensitive and it's nice to just stay ahead of that and make sure that you have some sort of emollient to help with the chafing that might occur.
The chafing that will occur.
Yeah. That's another thing that goes with that is painkillers. Make sure that you have the painkiller that works for you and stay ahead of that pain. It's always better to push in like a little bit of a higher dose at the beginning, right? That's what you always say.
I say, it's better to preload with the painkiller beforehand, before you get to the point where there's no return.
Yes.
If you're deep in pain and you're just trying to take Tylenol or naproxen to try to deal with it, good luck. You gotta really manage it before it even starts. Once you start getting those twinges, take the medicine.
Medical expert. Keep those painkillers handy, and also if you can get access to some sort of CBD oil or CBD edibles, that has really helped me in the past as well to help squash that pain and allow me to keep riding.
Another tip is to avoid inflammatory foods. So those are sugar-based foods. Sugar is a known inflammatory agent, so trying to avoid those a few days before and during your period will help. There's other inflammatory foods,
fried stuff,
anything heavily processed
is milk, right? Isn't milk?
Yeah, milk,
dairy,
gluten. Those basically
all the things we like to eat.
Yeah, all the things we
alcohol.
like to eat. Yeah.
But just try to minimize it right before your period. That will help. I've noticed a difference with that. Another tip that I would have is if you have a Nalgene bottle and you're able to fill it with some hot water, that can be great to alleviate cramps. You just, wrap a t-shirt around your Nalgene bottle, hold it against your ovary area that are having war, and that can really, really help to relax you. And if you have a partner, they can rub your back too.
I was gonna say, have your partner rub your back and your legs if you're getting the leg cramps.
Oh, the leg cramps. I get the worst leg cramps. Ugh. All right, well, I think that's it for today. We kind of wrapped up the logistics of dealing with your period, whether you should ride, and our best tips for dealing with Aunt Flo on the road. Hopefully you guys found that helpful. I'm curious. Let us know in the comments down below. How do you deal with your period on tour or in the backcountry, wherever you're doing something outdoorsy and active? I would be curious if you have anything else to add to what we have already talked about.
And for any male watchers that don't get their periods, I turn it to you. What do you guys do to support your partner during their menstrual cycle?
Good question. I like that one. Make sure everyone knows everybody is different. You have to listen to yourself, but these are just some of the things that we do and what we would suggest when you're on the road and moon blood is coming.
So give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed that video.
And subscribe for more content like this. And we will see you in the next one. Remember to